All right, guys, if you're listening to this video, it's because you seem to enjoy the angelic sound of my voice. So just like last time, we're going to look at an article, and you have two options. You can either follow along as I read it out loud, and I'll stop from time to time to give a little more detail, or pause to give you an opportunity to answer some questions. Now, we've just covered talking about why the two Koreas are separate regarding the Korean War. Today, this article is going to focus on the two sides meeting together in hopes of denuclearizing North Korea and eventually coming together as one country. So let's begin. Goyang, South Korea. The leaders of North and South Korea today met Friday, April 27th at the border of their countries. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in set aside a year that saw them almost on the edge of war. They grasped hands and walked together across the cracked concrete marking the Korea's borders. They said they would work toward having no nuclear weapons in either country. The leaders also plan to work toward an official end to the Korean War this year. However, their meeting ended with a few details on how to reach those goals. A nuclear standoff has terrified millions of people. North Korea has done nuclear and missile tests. The two leaders admitted to having a difficult past, and there are doubts that after earlier talks, things will be different this time. Now, one of the things that it's mentioned here earlier talks about they want to officially end the Korean War, which ended in 1953. So technically, they have been at war for over 70 years. If you remember, one of our vocabulary terms was the word armistice, which means to agree to stop fighting, which basically is just more of a truce than it is an actual treaty. Now, a pledge to rid countries of nuclear weapons. The leaders repeated a previous pledge to rid the country of nuclear weapons. It delayed one of the world's most pressing issues until a meeting between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump in coming weeks. The meeting brought together the two men from nations with a history of fighting. They smiled after Kim walked over the border to greet Moon. Kim became the first leader of his nation to step on southern soil since the Korean War. Both leaders then stepped together into the north and back into the south. So the reason why this was such a huge moment is that neither country wanted to come. They could never come to an agreement on where to meet, how to meet, and why they were to meet. But during President Trump's term as president, he had made talks about actually talking and meeting with the North Korean leader. Swing in relations between North and South Korea. It marks a swing in relations for the countries. They have gone from nuclear threats and missile tests to signs of peace. Standing next to Moon after the talks ended, Kim faced cameras sending his image live to the world. He said that the Koreas are linked by blood as a family. The leaders also pledged to be free of nuclear weapons, something they have said before. The latest talk between the Koreas, Kim said, should not repeat the unfortunate history of past agreements that only reached the starting line, then they fell apart. So this has actually happened multiple times where they've started to have communication between the two countries, and both countries agreeing to get rid of their nuclear weapons. But as soon as they said that, something happened or someone got offended or upset, and those conversations stopped. Still an official state of war. The meeting should be seen in view of the last year. The United States, its partner, South Korea, and North Korea made threats as North Korea held weapons tests. It should also be seen in light of the long history of the two Koreas, which fought a bloody war. They are still in an official state of war. Both countries agreed to push for talks this year with the United States and possibly China to officially end the Korean War. The conflict went from 1950 to 1953. It stopped with an agreement that never ended the war. As I mentioned earlier, they're still technically at war with the two countries. All they did was pretty much just sign a truce saying that they would stop fighting because it was a pretty brutal war that killed millions of civilians. Now, civilians, we're talking people that aren't people that are involved with the military. So we're talking women, children, the elderly, and so forth. Many will judge the meeting based on the weak nuclear talk. North Korea's nuclear and missile tests last year likely put it close to becoming a true nuclear power. The North claims that it is already at that level. It has spent decades building bombs, although countries around the world have opposed it. So the biggest sticking point, or the reason that a lot of countries don't trust North Korea, is because even though the international community, other countries have condemned North Korea for testing nuclear weapons and for shooting missiles into the sea, North Korea is still doing it. So it's one of those where the world really wants to denuclearize North Korea. South Korean leaders criticized the meeting. South Korean leaders criticized the meeting. They said it fails to get a clear pledge to give up nuclear weapons. However, the Koreas made progress on other points of trouble. Moon agreed to visit Pyongyang, North Korea's capital, sometime in autumn. Both leaders said they would meet regularly and call via a new hotline. So, a lot of South Koreans are skeptical or don't really believe when Kim Jong un says he wants to denuclearize North Korea, because things like that have been said in the past, and then only for them to change their mind or launch a new missile. So a lot of people are kind of saying, we've already been down this road before. Naming a peace area and allowing reunions. They settled the problem over their western sea border. It will be named a peace area. Fishing activities are to be secured for both countries. They also said they would allow reunions of relatives separated by the Korean War. Kim said he knows there are doubts on whether the meeting will bring results. If they go forward hand in hand, it will be impossible, at least for things to get worse, he said. He would visit the president's Blue House if invited, he said. Now, one of the major tragedies of the Korean War and the aftermath of it is that a lot of families were still separated, after they put up the demilitarized zone, and how you had family members not knowing how their family in the South or in North Korea were living, or if they even were still alive. So this is starting to kind of break down some of those barriers they have, preventing people from seeing their families, which is a good step in the right direction. Border crossing may be unplanned. The historic meeting of the two leaders may be most remembered from the meeting. It was planned in detail, however, crossing the border more than once may have been unplanned. Before the crossings, Moon stood near the Korea's border. He moved forward when he saw Kim appear in front of a building on the northern side. They smiled and shook hands with the border between them. Moon then invited Kim to cross into the south. After Kim did so, Moon said, "You have crossed into the south, but when do I get to go across?" Kim said, "Why don't we go across now?" And then led Moon into the north and then back into the south. So remember, guys, this is huge. We've talked a little bit about the DMZ. Remember, one of the things we've covered in the DMZ is that you are not allowed to cross either direction, especially because in the past, people have actually been shot at, or people have actually lost their lives crossing that border. So the fact that they were able to go back and forth between the two borders is pretty amazing. Moon led Kim along a red carpet into South Korea, and they took a photo inside the Peace House where the meeting took place. Expectations are low on the nuclear issue. Past talk of limiting North Korea's weapons has ended in charges of cheating. So, once again, a lot of people aren't really sure that these talks are going to change anything, considering how this has always been promised, and then they kind of throw mud at each other, throw accusations saying that both sides are trying to sabotage each other's country. However, some say that the only way to get a deal is to do what the Koreans tried. They should sit down and see what's possible. So you have people who are saying that this meeting was a waste of time. Others are saying, you know what, we at least have to try. And that's what's happening. Because at the end of the day, both countries, their main goal is to reunify and have one Korea. Now, how that happens is obviously a different story. All right, guys. So make sure that after you listen/read this, you open up Flipgrid and answer the things that I want you to do. So, for example, I need you to give me 2 things that you have learned about the article and 2 questions that you may have after listening/reading to me read it out loud. Thank you.